Hereby call to order the Roseville City Council meeting for Monday, March 16th, 2026. Mr. City Manager, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Strawn.
Here.
Councilmember Schroeder.
Here.
Councilmember Gruff.
Here.
Councilmember Bauer.
Here.
Mayor Rowe.
Here. And with us at the table here this evening, we have, by way of introductions, our City Attorney Rachel Tierney, who's at the end of the table on my right, and our City Manager Pat Trudgeon, who's on the other end of the table on my left. We have guests and staff who will be participating in the meeting, and we'll make those introductions as those agenda items come up. For people from the public, we do have a complete set of the materials for this meeting and a binder in the back of the room under the big clock by the door, which is available to be shared by the public. That has everything that we're considering this evening in terms of meeting materials. There are also individual copies available of the agenda so that you can follow along with your own copy if you'd like. We do ask if you have a cell phone to make sure and silence it, or otherwise assure that it doesn't disrupt this evening's meeting. And with that, we'll ask folks to stand if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That then brings us to consideration of the agenda this evening, and I'll check with staff as always to see if there are any changes that need to be made to the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, no changes to the agenda, although I would note that we did flip the item 7A and 7B from the original agenda published last week for scheduling purposes. So 7A, discuss broadband franchising, will be the first one taken up, followed by the presentation about Visit Roseville. But otherwise, the agenda, there's no changes.
Thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Are there any changes that council members would like to make to the agenda, or items that council members would like removed from the consent agenda for separate consideration? Not appear to be the case. Then we will check with the audience, members of the public. As noted in the previous request, we have section 10 of our agenda, which is known as the consent agenda. These are, in this case, 5 items which are rather administrative in nature and are usually taken up at the end of the meeting as a single motion with limited opportunity for input. But if anybody is here this evening to either ask a question or make a comment about one of those items in section 10, this would be the time to let us know, and we can move that item forward in the meeting for your participation. Is there anyone here for an item in section 10 of tonight's agenda? Does not appear to be the case. That being the case, then, it would be appropriate to have a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Groff to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye opposed. That passes unanimously. We have our agenda for this evening. Next would be our first opportunity for public comment. This is an opportunity for general public comment that isn't related to items on this evening's agenda, but may be related to city business or of interest to people in the community. We will provide opportunities for public comment during agenda items as those come up. Is there anyone here this evening to speak under general public comment? All right, feel free to come up and have a seat at the chair, and just a note for folks following along that as usual, the rules of the road for public comment are a 3-minute time limit per speaker. We do ask that you introduce yourself at the beginning of your comment and indicate either your address or your street for the record, and then also address comments or questions to the council. We may not be able to answer all questions or respond to all comments this evening, but we will certainly attempt to direct follow-up effort in that regard. With that, we have our first speaker under general public comment.
You're so close. Hi, I'm Andy. I live over by Acorn Park. One question that's kind of unrelated to my comment. What gets the table down in front out? Is it the follow-up meeting? It's interesting. It's exciting. Anyway, I am here to talk about drones. There are so many drones everywhere. I have been talking to lots of people, and there is a lot of concern about it. And we talked a long time ago, and I know it's not you guys. I know you are not the FAA. But I feel like you are an avenue to kind of bubble up littler voices and some more voices. And then I was thinking you could talk to maybe sort of coalition of cities, commissions of cities. I don't remember what the format is called, but sort of the other cities, which are also full of people that I suspect are worried about drones. And then maybe bubble up from there. I don't know what's reasonable to expect, but I'm here with a concern about that. They're launching them just all over the place, out of the Roseville Public Library, just out of communities, trailer parks everywhere, and I mean, sort of explicitly it's surveillance, right? I mean, this is sort of an uneasy time for that. They're putting together lists of sort of residents who aren't doing anything wrong, but we're sort of calling domestic terrorists and the given political climate and these sorts of things. So I think there's like a big concern about it. Again, understand you're not the FAA, not sure what exactly I expect you to do, but I think, you know, talking more broadly, I mean, we wrote the letter, or y'all wrote the letter to the state about sort of rent or eviction moratorium, these sorts of things, right? Just something in that arena I think would be cool. I want to just, you know, sort of highlight it and make sure that like people know about it, which I imagine you might. You could have looked up any night and seen them in the sky. They're quite popular. And that's the point there. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments this evening. Is there anyone else for general public comment?
Hello. Hi. Okay, so like I don't need to have a mic in front of me then, right? At this small table?
Yes.
Hi, so I'm Carrie Gelly. I live near Highway 36 and Dale Street. And I'm gonna echo the concern of my neighbor, community member, about the drones. And just to reiterate or, you know, add emphasis to that. Shoot, I was gonna start my little timer here, but I know you guys all keep me going. So I was really concerned to hear that a drone launched from the Roseville Public Library during library hours, when families, kids, other folks could be there as a safety concern as well as a surveillance concern. And then a community member reported to me some more details of the surveillance of the mobile home parks that were going on. So reporting that drones were kind of just regularly going up and down the railroad tracks that are just right adjacent to Roseville Estates. So having close proximity to Roseville Estates. So yeah, I'm concerned about surveillance, safety, any of that. And so if there's something the city could do, you know, write a letter, advocate, put it on legislative priorities, some type of regulation or permitting required. And we're knowing that some of these drones are operating without having their transponders on. Understand it, they're not identifying themselves as they are supposed to be according to FAA rules. And so anyway, they're operating just not, you know, just outside of how they were supposed to. So anything that you could do on that note, I would appreciate. And then my second concern is about the potential for bounty hunters. And you've maybe seen some articles about that and some video in our nearby cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. So I would just ask that the Roseville Police does not collaborate with or contract with bounty hunters. If the city could pass some kind of resolution or ordinance to prohibit bounty hunters from operating within city limits, that's something I would ask for. And my concern is that they may be operating illegally. They're less trained even than some of the federal agents have been. So there's a significant discrimination risk, a liability risk for the city, safety risk for any of us citizenry if some type of bounty hunter incident got out of hand. So those are my two concerns that I'd ask for staff and council to help with. And lastly, which I meant to start out with, I really do want to thank the city and the staff and the managers for a lot of the work you have done in responsive to community input these last couple of months, supporting our immigrant neighbors and trying to create safety and equity for all of us in Roseville. So I do appreciate the work that's been done. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments this evening. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak under general public comment this evening? All right, then we'll go ahead and close the opportunity for general public comment, and we'll move right into our business items. I don't believe we've got any other intervening items, so we can proceed right to our first business item, which is item 7A, and that is to hear information about and have discussion about broadband franchising in this area. And with us this evening, we have the attorney for the Cable Commission of the 9 cities that Roseville participates in, Michael Bradley, and he's here to give us some information and perhaps help us with some questions we may have, and maybe steer us in the right direction if we want to look into this activity. Hello and welcome.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and good evening, council members. It's a pleasure to be in front of you. Like Mayor Rose said, my name is Mike Bradley. I'm with the law firm of Bradley Warner. I've had the privilege of representing the North Suburban Cable Communications Commission for many years now. And really, I'm here to let you know of a new development in franchising law, which is an unusual topic, I know, but we had the opportunity to negotiate the first broadband franchise in the state of Minnesota just recently. I represent the South Washington County Telecommunications Commission, and the city of Woodbury is a member city in that jurisdiction. And they asked the commission to franchise the broadband companies in that area. Just so you know, you're one of 9 member cities in the North Suburban Communications Commission. You have all 9 member cities have agreed in a joint powers agreement to have the commission be the franchising authority for the area, meaning they negotiate the franchises for the city and they manage all the franchises for the cities. The cities themselves actually grant the franchises. Okay. Just wanted to point out, I don't know who's running the show, but
I can write.
if we go to the next
Pat is,
slide.
of course, running the show.
I just wanted to share some very high level benefits of this franchise, which we're really excited about. I won't go over all of them, but there are a number of benefits, and you'll see that they benefit your city, it benefits the residents, and it benefits the Cable Communications Commission that you have. First one is the franchise requires equal access to broadband for all residents. So what that means is that every citizen or every resident in your community is going to have access to the same quality of service of broadband throughout the city. Okay, so there may be different levels that you can subscribe to, but everybody's going to have access to the same type of service. Secondly, reasonable build out of your city, and what that means is with the franchise, you make sure that every single resident is served with service over a reasonable period of time. The state statute says over 5 years. Okay, so and that's exactly what we negotiated in South Washington, is a 5-year build out. There's an exception if it causes undue economic harm to the company. We don't want the company to go out of business, but we do want all of our residents served, and we want them to all have the same quality of service, okay, of internet service. Lastly on this page is the annual meetings, and Mayor Rowe will probably remember this when we negotiated the CenturyLink franchise for cable television service back about 10 or 12 years ago. We required actually quarterly meetings then to make sure that the companies were meeting the equitable build out that were built into those franchises. And when we reflected back on that process, we felt like quarterly meetings were maybe a little too much. But we wanted to maintain annual meetings so that we were making sure that all of the benefits that are being that are contained in the franchise are being they're being met. We can go to the next slide. I wanted to go over just 3 things on this one. The first one is customer service. If you are a broadband subscriber to some of these newer broadband companies, who do you go to if you can't get resolution through the company? And the answer is there's nobody. There's literally nobody to go to. The PUC doesn't address broadband, Department of Commerce, Attorney General takes general calls, but they're not responsible for customer service. But with the franchise, you have a requirement that they provide customer service, and somebody at the commission will take care of those customer service complaints if it's not resolved with the company. So you have somebody to talk to. We negotiated a discount for seniors and disabled persons of no less than 10%. We thought that was really beneficial to that community. And then finally is consideration. We know that these broadband companies are occupying our public right-of-way essentially permanently. And in return for that, they pay a franchise fee. And that franchise fee is 5% of gross revenues in the franchise that we negotiated. That franchise fee is used by the city as general revenue, that is also used by the commission to support their community media function for the area. Okay, we go to the next slide. Just basics on franchising. Franchising is kind of a unique contract. I understand that you just maybe recently went through the Xcel Energy franchising process, so you're had that just recently in front of you. But the franchise is a unique thing where you have an ordinance, which is also a grant of a privilege to use the public rights of way to provide services to your residents. Why is franchising better than permitting? With permitting, a company can get a permit and serve just a small portion of your city. With franchising, you get all those other benefits that I'm talking about. With permitting, you may get a permit fee, a one-time permit fee typically. And with franchising, you get a long-term, essentially, rental of your public right-of-way. Hopefully that makes sense. Why are we reassessing broadband now? The reason is last year a case came out called Ohio Telecom versus FCC. And what happened there was the FCC attempted to reclassify broadband as a telecommunications service. And for the first time, we have a judicial decision that's not based on any deference to the FCC. It's based on judicial precedent. And that case, the court held that broadband is not a telecommunications service. It's a information service under federal law. So when that case came out, it really made us step back and ask ourselves, well, if broadband is not a telecommunications service under federal law, what is it under state law? Is it a telecommunications service under state law? If it is, we're prohibited from franchising that. We're preempted. But maybe it's something else. And as we looked at the law, we thought that, well, cable communication systems are basically the other type of communications service that is addressed in state law. And when you look at the definition of cable communication system, it means a system that provides data and other communications content services. And when you look at that definition, that sounds and looks and feels like a lot like broadband. And so that was the argument that was put forward at South Washington and Woodbury, and it resulted in a franchise in that area. There's also a history of judicial precedent just in the Eighth Circuit, and that relates to voice over IP. And I'm sorry to be so technical and use these terms. I just know I'm boring people to death. I'm sorry about that, but it's my life. But you might think a voice over IP is telephone service. And under the judicial precedent, it's not. It's an information service, so it's not a telecommunications service. And that's been held consistently over the years, since the early 2000s. So that's why we reassess. So we looked at, is it a cable communication system or is it a telecommunications service? And we determined that it's a cable communication system. And under state law, we as cities are required to franchise those companies. We go to the next slide. For decision making on franchising, you just need to look at your city charter if you have one. I don't think you do have one. You're a statutory city, so that makes it easy. Woodbury is also a statutory city, so we're just basing it purely on the statutory analysis of whether it's a cable communication system or a telecommunications service. And so when you review that authority and you make your determination of what you think it is, if you think it's a cable communications system, then you've already made the decision. That's the nice thing about this, is you've already signed a joint powers agreement with your 9 other partner cities to franchise through the North Suburban Communications Commission. And so then you can direct staff to send these broadband companies to the commission to be franchised. And let's see. I think that's it. That's my update. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Questions from the council for the attorney? Councilor Bauer.
Thanks for coming. How do you define broadband in this sense? Specifically, I'm looking for how you distinguish broadband in the sense of something, say like a Comcast or a Quantum or something like that versus a tier 1, 2, or 3 like a Zayo, Lumen, or those service providers. Those are also in the right way. So how do you differentiate?
They are. Yes. Yeah, that's a great question. So the simplest answer is broadband is a way of bringing of high-speed internet access to residents and businesses. So you're right that Comcast provides broadband service. Lumen provides broadband service through Quantum Fiber. And I forget the other one that you.
I mean, you have Zayo. You have
Zayo, yeah, and Zayo, if I'm not mistaken, is more of a middle mile type of a provider.
Zayo is a worldwide tier 1 global provider.
Yeah,
So-
but they're not providing service to residents, correct?
They will.
Right, but I don't think they are right now.
No, you can. You can call and I can call them.
Zayo?
I've priced it out before. You can call them.
Well, then they would, if they are providing broadband internet access service and what I would call broadband edge services like VoIP, then they're a cable communication system and they should get a franchise, so long as they are or will be serving over 50 customers in the area.
So is that the triggering thing, 50?
50, yes.
So in this case, then we already have so in Minnesota you have RVIG, right, which is a popular service that covers Minnesota and a couple Midwest states. Typically, it's more focused on business, but they're already over 50 probably for consumer, especially if you consider apartment buildings and things. So if you were to implement a franchise fee on them, they would have to do that. Does that also trigger them to have to do a build out for the whole in the 5 years for all the residents?
Yeah, we'd have to look at that. I have not dealt with RVIG or Zayo yet in the Twin Cities. So we've really been focusing on companies that have been expecting to build out to all residents.
And that was the case in Woodbury, right? This works because there was a brand new service provider coming in that's looking to build out. Woodbury's not actually putting a franchise fee on their existing.
They have notified all of their existing providers that they need to get a franchise.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I feel like there's gonna be some challenges with that 50 with all your middle tier service providers. There's just a huge amount of gray area.
it's a common question that you're asking actually, is what do we do when somebody's already in the public right of way? Because in the Woodbury example, for that particular example, that company had not entered the right of way yet. Okay, and they're entering now, although maybe not now after the snowstorm, but now soonish. No, your point's well taken. I think that as we look at this, we'll have to address those type of issues. I just haven't been. I haven't looked at that issue yet.
Yeah, and I don't think you would address that until someone would come to a tier 1 service provider and say, no, you have to serve the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Then suit would be made at that time.
Just to follow up on that, each individual franchise is negotiated between the franchising authority and the entity. And so they don't all necessarily have to have the same exact terms necessarily between the
That's
different.
true. Yeah, these are
providers.
non-exclusive franchises, and they can be different.
So that might be part of the factor that enters into it as well as working between the franchising authority and a provider as to whether they qualify under the criteria and then what the actual terms of a franchise might be, if I understand the process.
No, you're right on.
Did you have a follow?
I just one follow up. I mean, following on that, another problem what's the resolution? Most of these providers actually, some of them own their own lines, some of them don't. Some of them are just leasing dark fiber. Some of them are just contracting for fiber for connecting points to points throughout. So how is that dealt with? It's broadband providers contracting with someone else for those lines. Does that trigger then the one that's providing those lines having to serve, or how's that work?
I don't know how that works. what I do know is that we will be working with the company that owns the lines in the public right of way. As far as other users of that line, we would need to be looking at the relationship with the owner of the fiber to determine what we would do with the user of the network.
It'll be interesting to see, because in most
Sure.
cases, the one that owns the lines, the fiber, is not the actual ones that's billing the resident. In many, many cases.
Yeah, and if that's the case, then we would be looking at the ultimate user. The company that's providing the service to the residents.
So it's different than what you just said a little bit ago, which is you're gonna look at the one that actually owns the lot, the fiber lines.
Well, I mean we are, but I also said that we're gonna be looking at how it's being used and what the relationship is between the user of the fiber and the owner of the fiber.
So in other words, if it's a fee based on gross revenue, part of their revenue may be the payment they receive from other parties to
That's
use
true.
the fiber.
Yes.
Councilmember Schroeder.
Yes, thank you for being here. Have, kind of a two-part question. Have you gotten a lot of pushback from the companies before, when you were working on this? And two, do you see that there might be some, where there might be legal pushback where they might try to take this to court? Or how settled is this, do you think?
It's not settled. This is a completely new development in the state of Minnesota, and I do expect pushback from providers. There is some legal risk, as there always is when you're dealing with with new interpretations of the law, and ones that companies typically don't want to be regulated, and this regulates them.
So, but at this point, there is no cases that are pending.
There are not.
Probably still so very new that they're still working on.
I think so. It's an argument. And we think it's a pretty good argument now that at least one provider has agreed to a franchise. They don't just do that.
Other questions from council members? Councilmember Grau?
So, the plus seems to be, it would be providing service to the entire community. Would this in effect raise the fees, or what do you see happening with fees for the individual?
I don't see that raising fees for the individual when there is a franchise fee that is received by the city and the commission that will show up on the bill. So if there's a 5% franchise fee, just like when you purchase Comcast cable television service, there's a fee on the bill that says franchise fee or something like that. Residents will see that. And it is a fee for use of the right of way, but some residents will see that to look like a tax too.
Other questions? Councilmember Strong?
Thanks. My understanding is that this does provide some consistent funding to our cable commission though. Is that correct? Does this,
Yes, it could, for sure.
this could serve as a way to replace the cable income that we have consistently been losing over time as less and less people subscribe to cable. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. We are seeing a decline in cable television subscriptions and revenue now, and that's resulting in less franchise fees to the city and that less funding to the commission as well.
So just in follow-up, so what that means for the citizens is less public access. If 9 North were to not have the funding in order to operate, we wouldn't have access to some of the community amenities we have when it comes to public access television and other things like that. So there's this opportunity possibly to fill in some of the funding gaps that are getting larger and larger as the cable dependence lessens.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think it helps fill a funding gap for the city as well as the commission.
And that was going to be my follow-up too, was that at this point, the commission and the cities don't have any arrangement in place as to with this type of franchising, what that split of the franchise fee would be. Under the cable franchise, there's two types of payments that the cable company makes. One is the franchise fee, which under the current 9 North arrangement or North Suburban Communications Commission arrangement, that entire franchise fee goes to the city. And then the Public Education and Government Access fee, which is I think a 3% gross revenue fee, that goes directly to the commission for the commission's functions, primarily for their video capabilities and video production. And then the cities then pay a portion of the franchise fees we get, the 5%, to the commission to help fund the regulatory work that the commission does in terms of dealing with customer service and the negotiation of franchises and things like that. So it's probably fair to say that that needs to be settled among the 9 cities as the cities, either collectively or individual cities, are looking to put in place franchises for broadband services. And does it make sense to have those conversations among the 9 cities like now to start making those arrangements so that then as more and more entities look to do build out in Shoreview and Arden Hills and Roseville, that there's sort of consistency across this commission area?
Yeah, well, I think it makes sense for the, the nice thing about the commission, one of the many nice things about the commission is every quarter, the city administrators and managers get together and talk about the issues that are affecting the commission. I would imagine this would be one of them that they would talk about and probably work out amongst themselves, then bring it forward to the commission and to the cities.
Councilor
I just had a question about proportional contribution, seeing as how, we're a fairly fully built city, and maybe there are portions of, some other cities that have a lot more build out potential. So how would that impact that funding mechanism, and the expectation of the city in that situation?
Gosh, I'm not sure I really know that. That's the benefit of having the city administrators and managers getting together and kind of talking about that. They're gonna know those issues really frankly better than I do as far as what all the different cities bring. And then I help write what they all decide.
But if I can add to that, one of the parts of, I believe it is the Joint Powers Agreement,
Yes.
is an agreement among the cities as to how those revenues are divided under the cable franchises. And it tends to be related on how much revenue comes in from each city to the cable company.
That's true, and
So
and
I can
voting-
imagine that's the precedent we might be looking at.
Yeah, well, and voting is decided on, the size of the cities too, so that is taken into consideration for sure.
It's pretty much a revenue-based thing, and so the size of the cities is the amount of revenue that each city has from cable subscribers, which stands to reason that in fully built-out systems, it's very population-based.
So assuming that, all 9 cities did this and they all started franchising and receiving revenue, maybe the decision's already been made, basically, but maybe not. So, we can go down that road when we get there.
Other questions? All right, so the ask here is to provide some guidance, I think, to staff as to how we might look at moving forward on this. I do also want to provide an opportunity for public comment if there is any too, so maybe Mr. Bradley, if you can take
Yeah,
a
for sure.
seat away from the table for just a moment, we'll see if there is any public comment. And then based on that, we'll talk to the council about how we might want to proceed.
Thank you all.
So we'll open it up for public comment on this concept, this idea of looking at the broadband franchising based on the understanding and the interpretation of state and federal law based on the courts, as well as how we've looked at state law. Hello and welcome back.
Hello, it's Andy again. Just some quick Googling on the phone, so far from an expert. But I don't think you can convince me it's not a tax, right? I mean, it might be a justifiable
I'll
tax.
just say, nobody, I don't think, is arguing that it is.
Yeah, right, just like, so like this would be another tax, and then you're paying the management fee to this commission, so I mean, I guess that would be the reservation, is like, and maybe you guys, maybe there are spots in Roseville that don't have internet out to them yet. I would be shocked, right? So like the build out aspect, I suspect something has been out there. I mean, I hate my internet provider to be fair, so I mean, maybe there's some quality of life coming there. But I mean, I just like in terms of like dollars spent on broadband internet in the city of Roseville, current state, and then that future state, I suspect the difference is probably about that 5 plus 3%, right? Like at least, you know, who's paying it? Maybe there's some elasticity of demand, maybe the company needs some, but I guess I'm just skeptical that my price didn't go up. Maybe it's worthwhile, right? I could be intrigued to hear more about the benefits, but I think build outs are done. You know, I guess maybe the angle is like the city needs revenue to replace the sort of declining cable revenue thing. So, all right, fair enough. I don't pay any of those cable fees, sort of in the same way that like electric cars are rough for the roads, for the gas tax. Like, I mean, I think I get that, but I guess I don't know. I would like to hear more about like the particular benefit and like what I, as like some dude who has internet, is getting. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak to this item this evening? All right, we'll go ahead and close the public comment then, and we can move to council consideration. I did have another question for Mr. Bradley, so I'm going to make him get up and come back up to the table here. And it relates to actually to the question from the public. You know, that is, well, first of all, just to clarify, I don't think we're talking about 3% plus 5%. That's sort of unique to the cable provider arrangement under federal law and everything like that. I don't think that same requirement exists for public educational and government portion of franchising under the broadband side of things, if I understand it, because they're not a cable TV provider. Yeah. And then the other thing is, so for Comcast or Xfinity, who is an existing provider in the city and certainly provides a lot of broadband to residents in the city, they are already under a franchise agreement for cable television.
That's true.
Under, I think it's federal law, if I remember from my days on the commission, we can't regulate you know, the broadband part of their service under
That's
the
good.
cable
I'm
franchise.
impressed that you remembered that.
Yes, so I'm presuming that in the case of an existing provider who also already has a franchise with the cities for cable services, we're not gonna try to double charge and have a separate franchise for the broadband. And then I also wanted to talk about sort of, you know, this notion of the equity in terms of how we treat different providers who are all using a right of way. And I think that might be one of the arguments in terms of the franchising, is that if gas and electric is using our right of way for their services and cable television under current franchises using it, does it, from a policy point of view, make sense to have the same requirement on other users of the right of way? And maybe that's not a question for you, but one for us, but at least I wanted to put that out there. I'm not sure if I got to
That's a lot of questions, or a lot of comments maybe, Mayor, but I
maybe
think.
correct me if I'm wrong in any of that. How's
Yeah,
that?
so I think your first point was, how do we treat cable television operators, and are they different than broadband providers? And the answer is, cable television providers like Xfinity in this area already has a franchise to build a cable communications system, okay, under state law. It's the same law that we use for broadband. Okay. Now, under federal law, I'm really impressed that you remembered this, but
It took me 20 years.
the FCC issued a rule called the mixed use rule. And they said with cable television operators that are regulated as a cable service or cable system under federal law, which is different than a cable communication system, it can get a little confusing, but cable television is under Title VI of the Federal Cable Communications Act. The FCC made a rule called the mixed use rule that says local governments essentially can't regulate non-cable services, non-cable television services. So, and then that went on appeal, actually we litigated part of this thing. And we lost on this particular issue. We won on other things, but we lost on this particular issue that you can't regulate the non-cable service part. And they specifically said that you can't receive franchise fees on the non-cable part. So, so your point is a good one. Would we be looking for a separate broadband franchise from a company like Xfinity? The answer is no. They have a cable communications system franchise already, and there would be no real benefit to address cable television or broadband with the cable television operators.
Maybe that's all you need to answer right now.
I think that was the main.
The rest was
main
kind of
one.
observations on my
Yeah.
part. And the only other thing related to that specifically is, I suppose there is theoretically at some point in the future, a situation where there are so few cable subscribers and so many broadband subscribers that maybe there needs to be a reevaluation of how we're dealing with Xfinity or Comcast. But I imagine, depending if we have, some small number but still have some, we may not be in a position until that's zero to do anything different. So, and you don't have to
Well,
necessarily.
and Mayor, it's tricky because the cable operator has rights under federal law for renewing their cable television franchise, and right now they have a lot of benefits from being under Title VI of the Federal Cable Act. And so my guess is that they're not going to walk away from that anytime soon.
Thank you. Councilmember Stoll.
Combining what you said and what the mayor said. So I would assume telephone lines, those would be part of the telecom. Is that correct? Would that be, and so that wouldn't be regulated in this way because,
Think of the legacy it's a really good question. So think of your legacy phone.
Mhm.
Okay, so I visualize, most of us can remember having a telephone on the wall. So think of that, that's the old phone system, the old copper phone system. Yes, we are preempted from franchising those companies.
I think what brought to mind was then the mayor saying, if we're looking at regulating right-of-ways and, who's up, then it seems like outside of that, then there's our landlines and traditional phone systems, would they also be considered on something that we would consider as a city? And I just wanted to make sure that people in the public are aware that maybe you don't partake in public access television that you think, but if you're watching this meeting, you are taking advantage of the services of the Cable Commission. So this, and when we get a new fire truck, that's something that happens. So I think it's just really important that.
The video coverage of the fire truck, not the payment for the
No,
fire truck.
yes.
Just to be clear with
No,
the
the
public.
special grand opening of different things,
Yeah.
and obviously
And
it's
the
not every idea and the parade, and it's not everything that happens in the city. We would love it, but we have 9 other cities to share these staff members with. But I just think it's really important if you think, well, that doesn't apply to me, and you happen to be watching this, or you watch it down the road, it does apply to you because it is how we get that information. And I think there in the equity piece, not everyone is utilizing the interwebs in the same way that people are utilizing this for different reason and different information sources. And when we don't have some of the newspaper and other sources that people had traditionally relied upon, I just want to make sure we kind of look at it bigger than just, well, I don't watch XYZ, but maybe you don't watch that basketball game until it's your next door neighbor and you can't make it, or, so I just want to make sure we think about at some point, if we don't have funding sources, those go away or the city takes it on completely. And I'm not advocating specifically for franchising, but I just think people have to remember that it is a tax, but there's a way to pay for a service that you're getting as a member of our community. And unfortunately, we are all here by taxes. That's how it works.
And the one thing I would note too is that for the city of Roseville specifically, the lion's share of the 5% dollars from cable franchises that the city gets right now goes to fund our other communications activities, which includes some of the upgrades to the council chambers, as well as the bi-monthly newsletter, and things like that. And so and the salaries of all the people doing the communications work in the city, a couple of them. And so that's a factor too, is that, as cable subscribership goes down, our revenues to pay for the newsletter and pay for all of the other communication work that the city does and hopefully does a good job at, can decrease as well. And that's been a pressure, I think, that we've seen as a budget pressure for a few years now. And so we just need to, I think we're trying to be proactive to try to make sure that the work we do can be sustainable. And I suppose theoretically for the average homeowner, it may be a trade-off, and I haven't had a cable subscription for years, but I may be willing to pay for the franchise fee on a broadband because I know what the benefit is, and we have to have those conversations as a community, if that's the direction we wanna go. So from the council, actually, Mr. Trudgeon, as the staff that will be directed on something to do with this, my thought is, as we were kind of having the conversation with Mr. Bradley, that the cities may need to provide some kind of guidance to the commission as to, we want to see some policy developed, we want to see some negotiations about how this might look as we start to think about entering into it. Or the cities may say, we don't want anything to do with broadband franchising. I suppose that's, one of the outcomes as well. So is that what you're kind of looking for from the council?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Mayor, just a baseline, is this something that we should continue to explore with no commitment, obviously? We've had very general discussions as the city managers and administrators, knowing this is coming and seeing similar presentation and trying to understand that and trying to understand what that would mean for us. Either there's some interest in continuing to look at it and there could be some back and forth with the council and staff as far as we learn stuff, or if there's like, heck, no, we don't want to do it at all. That's something I can take forward to them as well. I think it's so early in the process, it's maybe hard to land definitively no, but certainly we can't say yes at this point until we learn a little bit more.
Great, thank you. So council, thoughts and direction that we might be able to provide, or conversation towards a direction?
I
Councilor
would say very much stay on the sidelines in this one. I would like to see, it's working in Woodbury right now because they had a provider come to them and say, I want to do franchise fees. Until I would like to see them, require a existing broadband provider to have to do franchise fees, figure out what the lawsuits are there, wait for more case law to happen there, and see what that falls out. I don't know. I think being first on this could be very expensive from a litigation standpoint, especially as I have a lot of experience working with these companies and the TBRs and running contracts and paying for these things. It will be litigated quite hard and intensely, and I don't feel like it's worth. I think there's, as we pointed out, there's so many questions that aren't answered. And I didn't even get into more of the technical problems that will happen in existing, such as we're talking about lines that are owned, but those lines are actually used by multiple providers at the same time. There's ways around that you can get around this with the last mile. I think it makes sense just to wait until Woodbury decides to try to push us onto other broadband providers, see what happens there, and then we can decide again at that point.
Other thoughts from council members? Councilmember Strawn?
So if others in the 9 North Commission choose to move forward and we were to say no, what happens to our partnership as a 9 North Cable Commission?
I don't know exactly, to be completely candid. Again, I think it's something that the city administrators and managers will work out with the management of the Communications Commission. I think if one doesn't go and others do go, then there has to be some sort of discussion on, what do you do with the revenues there. But the way we handled it in the Woodbury instance is there was a commission similar to the North Suburban Communications Commission. And really for the first time, we granted a franchise specifically for Woodbury and not the other cities. Their commission's a little bit different. They're the franchising authority for the whole area. They grant the franchise rather than the city. So I guess we'd have to see how that plays out.
I guess with that in mind, I would like to keep talking. I'm not saying I'm not promising, but I think I'd like to know more so we know how, as a city, we would fit into that equation as we were to move forward. If we were to say we're not going to join in, I think it's really, I can understand standing back, but I also want to make sure that we're part of the conversation and that we get to have a voice in it, so we don't wait to the end and not have anything because we've excluded ourselves.
Thoughts from council members? Councilmember Groff?
I would agree with that. I think it never hurts to collect more information. I think just saying no because there's something down the road that could happen or there could be a lawsuit. If we did that all the time here, we would never move forward. So I would move forward, get more information.
Other thoughts? Councilmember Schroeder?
I think there's a difference between getting some information and moving forward. I think maybe that's where the clarification needs to be. And again, as you heard me earlier, I'm concerned about litigation and how expensive that could be if that comes up. So I wouldn't want to be jumping in and saying, yep, we're gonna do it and try to be,
Let's be the test case.
yeah, let's rate this and all that. And the other piece is, do we even know, so say, basically it sounded like Xfinity, Comcast is off the board for franchise fees at this point. I wonder, I think they must be a big chunk of Roseville, I would assume.
I think Comcast has built out, from the cable's point of view, they're done with their build out. And
Right, but I
all
mean-
of those customers can have broadband through Comcast, which we can't regulate.
Right,
but
right, and so that's the other
Right.
piece is if the majority, and I don't know, but the chunk of people in Roseville are with Comcast, we can't get anything off of that anyways, correct?
So, correct, because they're a cable provider.
Right.
So, I'm aware that in my neighborhood anyway, there's been a fairly aggressive effort to build out from the people that market themselves as quantum fiber. So they're to a certain degree into the community. I have no idea what their percentage of coverage is or anything like that, or how they would respond to somebody saying that, well, actually, you need to have a franchise. Obviously, Excel has cities that charge franchise on their utilities and don't charge franchise, so they're kind of used to that, depending on which cities they're dealing with. So
yeah.
I guess the question is, we don't know for sure, but that's one that would be potentially somebody who's seems to be in this marketplace and would be affected by a decision in that regard.
But that's so I guess, and I'm really, how much revenue are we really talking at this point? I guess, since, Councilmember Strawn's going to be talking to these people at 9 North, I think it's a good idea for her to keep her ear to the ground and hear what other people are doing. And, just to hear, because it'd be curious if, again, I would really not want to be the first to jump in, but obviously we have to hear what other cities are gonna do. And, it's like everything, the conversations continue, I think. But again, I wouldn't want to start drafting something or putting something together at this point and incurring, I guess, expense. But again, that doesn't mean we don't keep our ears open. So I guess, that's pretty vague for you on that, but I think it's more on, in a way, wait and see what other people are going to do so we don't leap into it, but still hear what's going on. That's kind of how I'm looking at that.
Yeah, I don't think I'm hearing from the council that we
Yeah.
don't want to do it. I think that the hard no is not
Yeah.
part of the guidance.
Right,
Because the structure, as Mr. Bradley talked about, the quarterly or periodic meetings between all of the city managers and the staff at 9 North, that's a way to keep that communication going. I can say, and Mr. Trudgeon, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but from my interactions with the city administrators and mayors anyway, and some council members of other cities, I don't think any of the cities in the 9 city consortium are necessarily interested in being sort of on the bleeding edge or cutting edge of this themselves necessarily, just kind of by their natures. I could be wrong. Obviously, they could prove me wrong, but I've had some experience with them over the years. So I'm imagining that many of the other cities are sort of in the same place. We probably would be expecting something to happen in Woodbury with some of those other legacy providers that are already in the ground, as they've been asked to meet the requirements of franchising. So I think we may hear more things sooner than later anyway on that. But yeah, I think over the course of this next several months, I think we should continue to pay attention and, to the extent that the managers and administrators want to have conversations about what it might look like going forward and start preliminary discussions about, what might be the parameters as to how, revenues are divided. I mean, like right now, I can imagine a situation where if a provider isn't doing much build out in, pick a city, Lauderdale, and they don't get a lot of revenue from the broadband provider, but they're still getting cable subscription revenue, the overall mix just changes a little bit in terms of, votes on the commission, and that may be the way it goes forward with the broadband franchising. I don't know, but that's ultimately part of the negotiation. So I think it just makes sense to keep the staff, appraised of what's going on. Mr. Bradley's excellent about keeping the commission and keeping the 9 North staff that way, as well as the managers and administrators, and maybe that's where we just need to be right now. Councilmember Strawn.
Thanks. Councilmember Schroeder, I appreciate your vote of confidence. However, I'm gonna defer to the city manager as the expert in the area, being that this is what you do in your day job, and not me. But I just think the opportunity to be amongst the others in the city manager role with the staff and an intending to be in that role is a better fit on making some type of plans. But I think we should continue to be part of the conversation. And again, I don't foresee, I don't think any of our cities in this area have been known to be the cutting edge of every last thing, and that it's not an offense or a negative thing. It's just we all have our taxpayers' funding in mind, and the goal is to find the most advantageous arrangement for our citizens and for our taxpayers and for all of us. And so yes, I think it's wise that we continue to have the conversation and be part of it, so we know. And I'm not saying that we're making a 100% commitment, I think, but we need to keep asking questions, I think.
And I was just going to say, just to maybe wrap it up, that I know a lot of other city councils are talking and receiving presentations from Mr. Bradley. City managers, we haven't regrouped again to see kind of where everybody's at. I think it will be an ongoing conversation. The questions and the thoughts expressed tonight are ones that I share as well, because there's so much unknown here. So I think there's a lot more we have to understand how it works before I would see us as a group coming back and saying this is something we should absolutely do or absolutely not do. So I think we're still in the exploratory stages, so I don't think it hurts to keep looking into it a little bit more and learning more about it. And certainly when there is important information to share, or maybe some points where we may need to get some more direction, we can certainly bring that back for the council. I see it evolving over the next year or two, to be quite honest. I'm not sure if this is a great rush into going into this until we learn a lot more and see how it all shakes out in the end with the litigation and other cities.
And just in terms of the commission members' role, as I recall, the commission may provide direction to commission staff as to how to proceed on some of these things, as representatives of the cities that the commission members represent. And then like with the case of the cable franchises, I know the commission sort of deferred to staff and the attorney to do the negotiation of the details of the franchise agreement. But then ultimately, I think the commission took a vote to recommend the cities adopt the ultimate franchise that came forward. So many steps down the road for that kind of thing in this case, but it's certainly not a situation where you want to 100% defer. So, but there'll be an educational process through the whole thing for the commission members as well. So that's something to look forward to. All right, well, thank you, Mr. Bradley, and hopefully we haven't made you late for your second commitment this evening, or
It's okay.
sixth, or whichever
I'll
one it
deal with
is,
it when I
but
get there.
thank you,
Yeah, for
appreciate
sure.
it.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, with that, then we will move to our second item this evening, which is to receive the annual presentation from Liz Nowak, who is the president and CEO of Visit Roseville. As Ms. Nowak is coming up, I'll just note that Visit Roseville is the sort of, for lack of a better word, convention and visitors bureau for the city of Roseville, or there's probably a destination marketing organization, maybe that's the more term of art these days, and receives their funding, virtually 100% of their funding, from the hotel lodging taxes that are collected in the city of Roseville under both state law and city ordinance. And one of the requirements in our ordinance is that a representative of Visit Roseville comes before the council each year just to provide an update of activities and where things kind of stand in the community. And so Ms. Nowak is here this evening to do that, and we welcome you for that presentation.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Do I flip the slides, or is that
I can
something
do
you
it
could
if
do?
it's
All
easier,
right.
yeah.
Well, I shortened, you're in luck because I shortened the presentation that I gave to our board. So I'll do a quick recap of 2025 since we're already in the middle of March. But 2025 is when I took over and Julie Wern retired, and there's a staff of 3 of us, and we got a lot of exciting things happening, and we did a lot of exciting things in 2025. So just a few things. We did a citywide sticker quest that I'll be touching on. We also held our first Earth Day cleanup with the local hotels. Then we also did a Lori and Julia girls getaway weekend. It was our first time trying to do a ladies event in December, and we just have a lot of good things coming ahead, so. Just click, this is on this screen, this is our digital efforts. So based on, we do SEO, SEM, digital retargeting and that sort of thing, if you wanna get into all the details. But we received over 5 million impressions, and these numbers were based from April to December of last year. 84,000 interactions, and then 8,200 conversions. And what that means is the conversions, they actually clicked for lodging or attraction information. So one of the things, if you haven't liked our social media, make sure you log on because there's a lot of fun things. We did a hidden gem video. We featured Pity Q Barbecue, Par 365, and then the Bistro, which is inside the Courtyard by Marriott. That was actually our #1 video. It got the most views. So we also do things focusing on the Metro Micro, the new service that rolled out, the Metro Transit, Game Center, of course, Activate, and EcoClaw, just showcasing what there is to do in the city of Roseville. And then on the next slide, just talks about website and over 178,000 views. Again, this is from April through December. And what they did once they were on our site and how often they engaged and per session. The new users was down, but we're seeing that as a trend overall as AI. You can start to, as you've seen, when you go onto Google, you don't even sometimes have to go to the website. So that's why we're trying to show up on our digital advertising more than just the website because people are getting the information they need sooner and faster. Instagram stats, we had over 120,000 views. We did state fair giveaways. We did a whole post on all of our great local coffee shops from Happy Monday, Showtime, as well as Makwa. Just different things showcasing the new parks. There's just so much to see and do once you're in Roseville. The next slide, Facebook stats. So again, you can look at how many views we had, things that we focused on. National Travel and Tourism Week takes place every May, and for 2025, we thought we'd do something a little bit different and showcase some of our Roseville landmarks or locations close to Roseville, since we highlighted also the fair and the Bell Museum. And if you didn't get, I was gonna bring them and I forgot them, so I'll have to drop them off to your office, Pat, but we still have some left over from 2025, and we featured, as you can see, one of the Roseville Roses, the infamous rocket slide in Central Park, a nod to MacGyver, of course, with the rubber band and paperclip. And our most controversial, I like to say, is the Pronto Pup from the State Fair, because the ketchup on the Pronto Pup. Got a lot of heat for that one. And then on the next slide, you can just see some of the stickers. We actually get requests for people asking, some people were looking to purchase them. So we're like, okay, we'll just send them to you. But now we include them in our visitor, when they request a visitor guide, we just throw stickers right in there, so. Next slide just shows some of our blogs and things we feature. We wanna show, why we're perfectly positioned, why you want to stay in Roseville and you can do all of these activities, attend back to the 50s, go to the state fair, come for a weekend to go shopping at Rosedale, all the things we have to offer. Just more blog highlights as well. Everything likes to be in numbers, so it's like the 12 best patios, the 5 must-sees. So there's a lot of numbers when you're looking at blogs. And then just the final slide, it just shows some lodging insights. Again, April through December, using some of our Zartico data and just showing how we ended the year at 68% occupancy with an average daily rate of $128. And overall, it was a very successful year. We ended on a positive note within budget.
How did those numbers compare to prior year?
It was up just slightly by 1%, so, yeah. And we did lose a hotel, as you know, for 2025, but we were able to still maintain and hit our budget numbers. Yeah. So 2026, even though we're already in March, we'll jump right to that. I did put in here, and I think if you had a chance to review, just kind of some of our strategy and tactics and how we want to tell the Roseville story, drive our visitation and make an economic impact, build our relationships, and then strengthen Visit Roseville. And we actually, I hope you guys had a chance to partake in our first ever Roseville Restaurant Week. It took place March 1st through the 7th. And this was actually something, first time ever we did it, and we opened it up to every Roseville restaurant free of charge. So like the Minneapolis magazines, they charge a fee for the restaurants to participate. We opened it up completely free. and we did all the marketing on the back end. So we did radio promotions with My Talk. Stephanie Hansen, the local foodie, we partnered with her. She did. Did you see the videos? Yeah. Yeah, she did 6 different videos, and then we actually partnered with Every Meal. So it was a great opportunity to, food brings everyone together. So Every Meal providing food for children experiencing food insecurities. We thought it was a perfect way to partner with them, and then we're proud to, our social post tomorrow, we're gonna announce we're giving $2,500 to Every Meal from Visit Roseville as a thank you. And some of the restaurants I know, Pizza Luce gave their own donation as well, so.
How many restaurants?
21 participated, and some of those that didn't, they actually told me they didn't have the bandwidth to bring in more customers. So I personally went to like Carta Thai, one of my favorites, and they just said we are tapped out with the customers we have. So maybe next year they will, but 21 I thought was a really good number.
Did the restaurants feel that especially after sort of January and February of this year, that was a good time to try to get people
Yes.
back to the restaurants?
And actually-
subject to their bandwidth, certainly with staffing and things like that.
Exactly. It was originally slated for the first week in February, but we moved it with everything going on. We gave it a pause, kind of changed the messaging from get out to celebrate to get out and support. So it had a real come together message. So I think next year, hopefully that will be in
Yes.
better times. But February is a downtime for restaurants. So February, March is a perfect time. So, and we're waiting on, based on the early numbers, we also partnered with influencers. We had over 100,000 views. If you saw a lot of the influencers, we did a kickoff party at Crave. So a lot of influencers were out posting and then going to the different restaurants, so. Yeah. So that's a little bit more on that, on Restaurant Week. Tony Koo, though, did not, if he's watching the city council meeting, Tony Koo returned my calls. So if you've seen him, he's a huge food influencer and he has Roseville ties. He used to work at the Rosetown Legion. And
He has done Phil City Pizza.
yes,
And Eddie's Barbecue too.
yep.
So
And both of those were Restaurant Week participants as well.
apparently all I see online in
You have a
videos.
different algorithm.
And everyone I meet, I say, you have to try Ville City's mozzarella sticks. They are the best. And backed by popular demand, 2.0 for the sticker promotion. Just a sneak peek, we have a Lonnie Anderson, nod to her. We feature the largest butternut tree in Minnesota, if you have not seen it, in Reservoir Woods. Shopping sticker. We also have a fun one for the 45th parallel, which runs through Roseville, as well as the Nature Center, and also McDonald's, the first McDonald's in Minnesota. So we have so many firsts to feature, it's not hard to come up with some stickers. So we'll be rolling those out in May, so stay tuned. The Roseville in Bloom, as you may remember, 2020, 20 roses rolled out right as COVID was rolling out with it. But 18 statues still remain in Roseville. There's a few that are in need of some repair. So this one, we're really excited to roll it out in the summer, but it might have to be half and half depending on what repairs need to be made. So I know the one at the library, I'm working with Tivoli too on how we can get that one structurally repaired. But we want to relaunch it and reintroduce it as a free activity for families. Repaint the bases and then do a QR code or something where people can, definitely log in, see what the deals are, or just get out and take a free photo and get out and enjoy the parks. So stay tuned on that one.
Tivoli Two is the company that constructed.
Yes, they did the Peanuts originally, if you remember the St. Paul.
Just a question on that, is there going to be an opportunity if any local businesses or entities want to have a rose that didn't have one the first time around?
No, because they're at the locations that purchased them. So given,
No, I meant like
new ones. Oh,
locations to
maybe.
purchase a new one. I don't know
Maybe we
what
could
sort of
look
the
at that.
overhead is to do something like that, but I was thinking if there were entities that missed the boat the
yeah,
first
missed
time
it the
around
first time.
and would love to have a rose, maybe that's an
It's
opportunity.
a possibility. Maybe for 2027, we can put something in there. I know that when Kids in Need moved, they Nope, they graciously give it to every meal.
That's
It's
right,
still
they
there.
did.
It's still there. So, and then we moved the one from Rosedale to the community center. So we moved some around, so I thought it'd be fun to do a relaunch and a new map. We did lose Bent. He took his with him, so Bartley has the rose maybe in his backyard.
It's in the backyard, sure, you're right, yes.
And then Goodmanson Construction, they moved just slightly outside the border, so that's the other one we lost. But the rest, I mean, remarkably are in great condition. If you've been out to see them, people still post on them, they still comment, so. And then just a little bit of information on who we target in terms of leisure travelers and who we're looking to attract, focusing on the drive market, especially, you know, as the economy, so we see things, we're really looking for that convenience, the budget traveler. So it's gonna be more people coming from Duluth, Northwest Minnesota, Fargo, Moorhead, Eau Claire, Iowa. And then also still focusing on business travelers. It's slowly coming back, but we have Shannon in our office able to work with event planners and different teams and things like that. So it's, of course, overflow from the National Sports Center we're always getting. And we're waiting for Canadians to return. Anxiously waiting for the Canadians. So just a little bit about our main messaging. Perfectly positioned, where we're located. We have such a reasonable price point and then free parking, which a lot of cities cannot stand, you know, they don't have that same messaging. And then just a little bit on what we focus on. Again, spring break, summer travel, back to the 50s is a huge time for our hotels, as well as the Minnesota State Fair. Lots of concerts coming up, any games with the Gophers, of course. And then the holiday and winter activities with the Oval and Skating Center. We did roll out a skate and stay package at the Oval and hotels in January, but everything going on, we only saw a few redemptions. So we hope that'll be something we can do again because we have such a great gem in our backyard. And then just listed again, additional marketing efforts and strategies, and we're doing everything from print advertising. We have elevator wraps down in Rochester Mail, like the top 5 things you want to see that has a QR code, and we change that out seasonally. And the State Fair commented, Laura Hughes sits on our board, that she's actually seen an increase coming from the Rochester market to the State Fair. So we like to think we're playing our part in that. So anything from print advertising, a lot of digital, a lot of online stuff, but a lot of influencer marketing as well. And then we're still doing a couple trade shows here and there. So I think, did I cover everything? I did it.
All right. Well, thank
So,
you for
yeah,
the presentation. We really do appreciate it. You know, it's in the law that you have to do it, but I think it's really helpful for both the council and maybe the public as well to understand how those lodging taxes are used and what the benefit to the community is in terms of our local businesses, restaurants, as well as our hotels. So we do appreciate those activities and all the work that's being done by a very lean organization. So we do appreciate that. And I think there was a question from Councilmember
I
Stern.
just had a comment. I was impressed when I went to Spirit Mountain Information Center. They had a brochure and it was the most recent from Roseville. And the woman who was staffing the booth just said, "Oh, these are very popular. They're well done." So kudos to you.
It's great.
And there was a lot of things behind her, but a lot of them weren't necessarily most recent. And then again at the airport, there was the same. So thank you for that. I don't see the Minnesota Yacht Club event on your list of target market. I think you should do. And I just
We actually did, and we didn't receive any. They had blocks at the hotels. They put out room blocks, and we didn't see much of it. And it's a busy summertime, so they removed the blocks.
Yeah.
Maybe this year though they're adding a country fest.
Oh.
So.
And then I just have noticed some cross pollination between the Roseville Reader, some of the things that they had about Roseville's first, businesses, Old Dutch and some of the things. So I do see a lot of the things between them. So I really appreciate that. And I hope you guys continue to tap into some of the other communications resources in town because it's just anything we can do to help people. They swear we don't tell them anything. So we appreciate anything we can do to help get the word out. Thank you.
Definitely.
Comments, questions? Just sort of tying into some of the comments, just to clarify, the airport was MSP or,
Mhm.
okay, good, because I know that's a place that typically is focused on by this group. I had a question on the revenue side. Have you been able to track, or has it even been more than a blip, any of the revenues from lodging tax from our residential stays that people
It's
operate?
very low. I think, what did we say, $500, 700 maybe? Was
Yeah,
it?
I'm not sure what the
It was-
exact amount.
It was a very small amount.
Okay.
We have about a dozen or so that
Yeah.
are registered with the city,
So I suppose it's a question too of how much do you spend to enforce it versus what you're getting in revenue too,
Yep.
so.
It's
But
very,
I was
it's
just
very
curious, because
small,
I know
yeah.
we made sure as part of putting in the licensing of those specific entities that we wanted to make sure they were paying a lodging tax, so maybe
They are,
that's
yeah.
either an indication of their level of activity or we need to make sure they are paying. So, but I was
Could be
curious about
both,
that.
but yeah, it was a small amount in 2025.
We don't have a huge number that are.
And we don't, that's true, because if I remember right, we don't license the ones that are lived in by the proprietors, so it's just the ones that are sort of absentee, so that is a smaller number, that's a good point. All right, anything else from council? All right, well, we look forward to all those opportunities, I'll keep noticing all the videos and liking them as well,
Yes.
so sharing.
Right, and look for
Sharing.
the stickers, and I'll make sure if you didn't get the first run from 2025, that Pat has a good supply in his office. Maybe you can bring
That
next
rocket
time.
slide.
Oh, absolutely, thank you.
The rocket slide was the most popular one,
Yeah,
so.
it
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Again, Liz. All right, the next item on our agenda this evening is item 7C, which is to receive. Oh, certainly, no, go ahead. We were receiving a report, so I kind of wasn't in the mindset of receiving comment, but yes, if members of the public wish to speak to this, feel free.
Thank you, Carrie Gelly again. And thank you for sharing the presentation, easy to follow and really exciting to see what's going on and how our city's being promoted. So a couple of thanks and a couple of questions. Thank you for the restaurant week and the savvy to postpone that and to support our local businesses. And I'm just curious if there's opportunity to continue to support our immigrant-owned businesses, restaurant, retail, whatever that might be, through the year of 2026. That might be a request I would make. If there's just a little bit of extra, whether it's the promotion or maybe a couple of extra events that possibly could be thrown in. And then I'm curious if there are figures for during the Operation Metro Surge time, for those months comparing the hotel revenues to the same time frame a year ago. And I'm curious if there was an increase in revenue or a decrease, like what impact did that have? And then if there by chance was an increase and the ICE reservations resulted in additional tax revenue for the city, would the city consider diverting or assigning that incremental dollar amount that might have been gained toward community services? For example, toward the rental or mortgage assistance fund. For example, I'm aware that some retailers in the Twin Cities, when they were made aware that a customer was ICE, they may have taken a stance to then devote that revenue toward mutual aid within their community. So I'm just, if we did get a little bit of a bump in sales tax or lodging tax, if that might be something the city would consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment on this item this evening? All right, and I think I can probably provide a little bit of information in regard to the revenue to the city. Unfortunately, both the hotel tax and the sales tax that's collected by the city are statutorily required to be used for certain purposes, and so we don't have the ability to sort of use them for other purposes, as I understand it, and I certainly would be corrected if I'm wrong in that, but that's my understanding of it. So it's a great idea and appreciate the thoughtfulness and creativity in the suggestion of it, but I think we do have some limitations there. And please, staff, if we're wrong about that, let us know and we can
No,
investigate that.
that would be my understanding as well, yes.
With that, then, if there's nothing else on this particular item, we're ready for our item on the cash reserve fund report. And we have Sam Magaranu, our finance director, here to bring this item before the council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, member of council. Thanks for having me this evening, and thank you again for your flexibility this afternoon. I've sent an email with some updates last minute. I do appreciate your flexibility with that. All right, let's see. Okay. So that's a little bit bigger. Okay.
You should have a paper copy of it.
Is the one in the
got the
electronic
one here
packet also up to date?
Yeah, it should be.
See if it matches.
No, I should probably follow that, just mine.
So first of all, this item is driven by our internal policy the city has. I think it's good practice, especially now getting up for the budget season, to kind of take a look at how we ended 2025 fiscal year for the city, kind of looking at our cash reserves. Again, going into the budget process here at the end of March is kind of when we begin to look at our budget. So with that, I'm just gonna kind of get into this quick analysis here. But before we get started, if there's any questions prior to this, otherwise I can go ahead and kind of walk us through this presentation. Again, this is kind of good practice in following our policy. Per city policy, you're probably familiar with this, but any reserves above the maximum reserve levels for a specific fund that is driven by this policy shall be placed into the cash reserve fund. So the city operates a cash reserve fund, or has been operating a cash reserve fund, where this excess of funds are transferred and being utilized at a future time for maybe making whole other funds or using it in the budget process. With that, just to remind everyone, these are preliminary numbers. We are not going to be making any recommendations to do any of this transfer this evening. I think at a later time, probably towards the end of April, we will come back to you with a recommendation to kind of move some of this money around through some transfers. The reason for that is that I've just like this afternoon, I was reviewing the fund balances again. And we're in the middle of closing our books, getting audited the week of December 23rd to April 3rd, and things kind of keep changing with journal entries and kind of trying to wrap everything up. We made some other adjustments, and I realized, oh, things have changed. Maybe it would be best to kind of wait to make a recommendation this evening. With that, I'm going to want to draw your attention towards the general fund, which is our main chief operating fund for the city. This fund is projected to have a fund balance approximately $8.9 million at the end of 2025 again. And the fund balance reserve target for this fund is between 35% to 50%. Of the next year's, which is 2026, budgeted expenditures. So the budgeted expenditures for 2026 are about $30 million. So when looking at that $8.9 million, we're projected to end the year about 29.61%, which is below our low target of 35%, or about $1.6 million short. So with that kind of identifies the need, the projected need for this fund to be made whole, I guess, to meet its low target based on the fund balance policy for this fund. With that, there are a few other funds that are driven by this policy. One of them is the Parks and Recreation Fund 200. This fund is kind of unique here for the city because even though it's a governmental fund who operates with two main revenue sources, one is its fee and revenues from charges of services, but also it has a levy. Right? So typically you would see this fund combined with the general fund. However, here we're showing it separately, or we're tracking this activity for this Parks and Recreation a little bit different. However, the policy for this fund is to keep a target level between 20 and 30%. As you can see here in this chart, at the end of 2025 is projected to end the year approximately $2.1 million, about $2 million. Which is above its high target of 30%, ending projecting at 31.03%. With that, we can see we have some surplus in this fund that we have to address. And again, I'll be making a recommendation sometimes towards the end of April to move some of this money into the cash reserve fund. Our next fund is the Communication Fund, Fund 110. That fund is projected at a deficit, 4.22% fund balance, where the target low and high is between 10 and 30. So to bring this fund at its low target, we would need about $40,000 of a transfer into this fund. So that's something, again, we'll be looking at once we close our books to know exactly how much money we need to move around.
And if I could just quickly interrupt, this is the fund we were talking about earlier that is actually funded through a large part through those cable revenues. So that kind of helps us to see how the picture comes together.
Yeah, it's kind of going down. As is projected, again, this has been if I had to concur, many cities are kind of seeing this type of revenue stream. And lastly, we have our license center, passport center, which is our fund 265 for those who follow our financials. And this fund balance is projected to be close to $900,000, which is about 34.17% of next year's budget expenditures. Again, the target for this fund is to keep anywhere between 10 and 15. Again, 34 it's significantly over. A variance of 636,000 from its lowest point to 500,000 from the 50%. And those notes there at the bottom of this sheet is kind of explaining what I just pointed out. With that, I guess for this evening, we don't have necessarily requesting you for any motions to. The only thing we're requesting is for you to kind of review it. Again, it's a great starting point for our budgeting process to kind of see where we're at with these things. We'll be closing the books probably by the end of April, and we'll be able to get an idea of the auditor's input, if any of this revenue have to be moved around. But I think the biggest need for us is to address this $1.6 million deficit, projected deficit in the general fund, and try to propose a solution for making this fund whole, at least to bring it back to that 35%. Obviously, the cash reserve fund is projected at this point to be at $924,000, and depending how much we decide to move into this fund, we might be able to get to that point of 1.6, which at this point it's about $700,000 short. To even if we would utilize all the fund balance in the cash reserve fund, we still need about $700,000. So we'll play with the numbers. We'll get some actual numbers of the fund balances, and we'll bring back to you a staff recommendation towards the end of April.
It's probably worth clarifying to the members of the public, when we talk about a deficit, we're talking about a deficit relative to a target fund balance level.
Exactly.
The fund itself, I'm going to double check here, our expenditures and revenues, our revenues were slightly above expenditures for the year, so it technically wasn't an annual deficit in operating.
And maybe I'll bring a little bit more context to this process of having a low and a high target of a fund balance reserves. So these are reserves, so below our target reserves, which are recommended by the state auditor. The reason for this high reserve, somebody's like, well, what do you need, $10 million in reserves in the general fund? Well, because most sources of revenues for the general fund come from property taxes, and those revenues are remitted to the cities twice a year. So we have to have sufficient funds to operate the city from January 1 of 2026 till June or July when we actually start getting money. So most cities operate under this process where you have a cash reserve balance in your main operating fund to meet obligations for the first 6 months of the year. So 6 months, if you look at about $30 million of budgeted expenditures, if you do that math, it's about that 35% target fund balance or reserves, we call it. So we're not at a deficit. We actually have $8.9 million projected in the fund in cash reserves. However, it's recommended to have a little bit more. So the deficit is between the fund balance targets, not between a city being at a deficit. So thank you for clarifying that.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could add that, as you mentioned that, we took in more revenue than we expended, but we are comparing that percentage now to the 2026 budget, which growth
Goes up.
considerably.
Right.
So even if we saved a lot of money, invariably, if we're close to that line of 35%, we're most likely gonna go below because the numbers have changed here a little bit. So it's a function of just basic math in the end here, so.
No, I just want to make sure that folks understood that we weren't operating in a deficit for
Deficit,
2025. I mean, not that sometimes funds don't do that, just depending on what's going on. And sometimes, for instance, on capital funds, it's not unusual to intentionally operate on a deficit because you're actually using money out of the fund that you've saved up for a particular capital expenditure, and that's the purpose of that fund. So it's okay to do that, especially on the capital side. But generally, as a practice on the operating side, we don't like to do deficit spending because we're trying to make sure that we balance our budget. And that is the legal requirement when we set a budget, that we have to balance it. And certainly we work hard to make sure that that's what we achieve over the course of the year.
Absolutely.
Questions from the council, Councilmember Schroeder?
Again,
Or
and thank
comments.
you, for bringing up that it's based on the 26 year. And because what that is that's the money we need to spend in 26. So if it was based on 25, the budget reserve would look good, but it's not covering what we need. So
Exactly.
so it looks daunting, but that's why we all, make sure people understand it's for the next year. And I'm very supportive that we're waiting for the adjustments to come through. That, having the audit look at, because that could, be small, could be big, but it's good to have a better number. But I'm glad we do have this now because we have an idea about what we're walking into. So when you bring it back, we won't be surprised at some of these numbers. And this, the cash reserve fund is something that I had worked on years ago when I was on the finance commission, because for exactly this, having some money when we do have this problem and try to make sure that if one fund's over and another fund is under, that we could move it in and not just rise the levy to cover the short in the one fund. So we could be able to then, net it versus just dealing with the ones that are over. So it's important people understand, how the mechanics of that works. So, and then to the mayor's point about, we're not worried that we're gonna run out of money before we hit April. Once we have the number, there is a cash reserve so that the city will pay their bills and we will be fine. It's just making sure we have enough, reserve going into later in the year too. So I just wanted to emphasize that it's not a panic situation. It's just one of these things that we want to make sure that we are somewhat conservative in making sure that we have cash set aside to pay bills as they come along. So
Absolutely. So again, if you look at this column here, it's the budget of 2026. So that's the point. So in those numbers every year, if we compare ourselves to how we ended the year with the 2025 budget expenditure, we're probably looking a lot better. Every year we have at least 7% or 6%. I believe last year close to 8% levy increase. So that's kind of the budget change. So that's absolutely correct.
anyway, so thank you.
And again, the other thing is to think about some of these funds, even though we're breaking it out in this way, it's probably been done for our internal tracking for those funds. But ultimately, you could probably combine all these funds into one fund and look at the fund balance as a whole. So the cash reserve fund, it's a tool that we have, but in a sense, it's kind of taking money from here, moving in here. But it's helpful to kind of look at this maybe next time I come in April, maybe have another line item, see as a whole, how would that look like? If we look here, we're probably at a break-even point right now. It looks like we'll be utilizing the entire cash reserve fund this year to bring that general fund by itself to that desired target of 35%. We can bring it higher if we wanted to, but that would require a little bit more effort, I guess.
Well, and a lot, again, that's based because the amount of budget that from 25 to 26 did go up, but
That's
bit of a jump.
Yeah, it typically
Yes.
does.
And that's exactly what is triggering it, yeah.
Okay, well,
I think we've got a couple more questions. Councilmember
I just wanted
Estrella.
to comment, thank you for this very clear and concise and succinct vision of what's going on here. It's really nice to see it all in one place and it's very easy to see. Thank you.
absolutely. Yeah, you're welcome.
Councilmember Grove.
If you'd like to see this data in a different format, feel free to email me, meet with me. This was kind of how I envisioned it. And that was helpful.
And the history was nice to have, so people
Yeah,
can see the
that's very
history.
helpful.
Yes.
Sure.
Councilmember Grove.
I just appreciated the analysis of what the ranges are, why those ranges are the way they are, because people don't understand, why is this 10% and 15%, you know, in this range? So that was helpful to have that explained on the general, what the rate is. Just gives people an understanding.
Other questions or comments from the council? The only other thing I was gonna note is I think historically, as Mr. Magarano noted, other cities don't break out their Parks and Rec necessarily into separate funds and track them separately. And actually, this isn't even as broken down as the city does it. We do have two funds for Parks and Recreation. We have the Parks and Recreation Program Fund and the Parks and Recreation Maintenance Fund. And so
My
that
spreadsheet
actually,
has all the detail.
yeah.
It's a recommendation for
So-
city manager
so,
to
yeah.
kind of. But I do have the data if anybody.
No, the reason, I just wanted to point out, I think that historically, there's a reason for that, which is because two things. One is that Parks and Recreation is kind of unique across city services in that it does have that significant portion of its funding coming from the recreation fees and charges for services. Something on the order of magnitude of around 50% of the fee, the revenue. And so that's unique, and I think that was part of why prior councils decided to do that segregation of that fund. And then also there is a great deal of interest in the community in Parks and Recreation services, programs, and infrastructure. And so I believe that may have been somewhat influential in past decisions to segregate that fund as well, to make sure that a lot of attention is paid to that. But just for the benefit of the public, much of what the rest of the city does is covered by the general fund. The general fund covers us, the city council, it covers the administration department, finance department, it covers police, fire, it covers a certain amount of public works, although a significant part of public works is covered by our utility fees for water and sewer, which largely pay for the water we purchase wholesale from St. Paul and the sewer services that Met Council provides to the city, but also some of the staffing costs related to maintaining that infrastructure, et cetera. So, something like, once again, about half of our overall budget is those utility things, and the rest is police, fire, other public works functions, and then local, the general government functions. So hopefully that helps people. And then we've got this separate fund for Parks and Recreation, just to kind of put the big picture together for folks that may have wondered why we do it that way. I did have a question on the License Center Fund, significant surplus there. How does that compare to, say, typical past years, maybe non-COVID past years? And then also, is that because we've seen a surge in revenue, and will part of the recommendation potentially consider how those funds are used and how much is swept to the cash carry forward based on some of the other things we're doing related to the license
I
center?
think that's going to be part of our recommendation and discussion, is to look at how much of the reserves from licensing, especially looking forward to what's coming for this department, call it this way, with a new building and what we want to do. So we're probably not going to be moving a lot of these funds, just kind of planning on that meeting and having some conversation, and that's going to be part of that recommendation. So initially, I had that analysis. If you got to read the previous report that I had on Friday, that was included analysis, and I was noting that just a portion of this and why, what the amount was. Now that things have changed, but for this fund, things haven't changed much. It's mostly the general fund that things have changed. So I think that recommendation is going to be within those lines. Probably the parks would be might be a mix between the high and the low, but we'll have to talk about it. But yes, that will be something we'll be considering when we make a recommendation for our transfer.
Yeah, and in 2025, it was a very good, productive year, one of our higher years in a long time. So, and I know January and February are very busy, so that trend is pretty good right now on that.
Could staff follow up maybe with the council with just a summary of kind of comparing some of the typical past year, non-COVID, with what we saw in revenues this past year?
I can make sure I have a slide kind of showing historical data for at least for the last 3 or 4
Okay.
years.
Okay.
I already have the data, I can put it in a second here if you want to, but I'll
No,
bring,
that-
I'll bring it
that's
back.
fine, yeah, follow-up is fine. We wanna make sure we get it right.
At the end of April, I'll bring that data. I already have 3 years of data in the budget process that I'm
Yeah.
setting up, but I wasn't prepared for this evening, but I will bring that up on the April meeting.
Didn't we purposely keep a larger amount of funds in that account because of this going? So
In
like
past decision years, yeah.
comparing them, we should take that into account as well.
Yes. And just on that note, I think you said 3 years historical information for the budget process. I think, don't we look at a little more than 3 years back? It's like the forecasted year for next year, the current year's budget, because we haven't finished the
Budget
year,
actual.
and then maybe 4 prior years or something
Yeah,
like that.
I have 3 years, and I can add more, that's not a problem.
No, I just would wanna make sure we're not changing from what we've already had.
3 years of actuals plus 3 years of budgeted.
Okay.
I plan to show for a tool for us city staff internally to use to kind of set up the process if there's a need for the staff. I'll be using the same data for council in the past if needed.
Yeah, okay, that's, I
It was
just wanted
mostly
to be
going
clear
through
about
the
that.
process, some tools that we have, so that's what I meant.
Perfect, all right. Well, maybe that's, unless there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this item. Then we can segue to our second, or part 2 of our budget discussion, which is to look at the budget calendar for 2026, going for 27 budget.
Just gonna- I got it for you. There you
You have
go.
access to this?
Yeah.
Alright, hey, that's kinda cool.
one of the privileges.
I could see a mouse here. I wasn't sure who was
Privilege of
driving it.
being city manager, right?
Alright. Again, this is also driven by internal processes, and I think it's good practice to really set up a budget process that's gonna help guide the council, guide the staff in setting up the budget and the levy for next fiscal year. This budget calendar is intended again to set up the budget for the 2027 budget, not the 2026 budget. Even though, so those are kind of sometimes people are like, well, don't we already have the 2026 budget? But this is for the 2027, and this is a year-round process for city staff and city council. So it begins very early. We finally feel like we're done with the 2026 budget, but we're already facing the 2027 budget because it takes time, it takes a lot of planning. So having a tool like this, I think, is important. In the first part of this budget calendar, we can note that there are significant dates that are mostly council dates where it is expected to have council participate. Some of the dates in red here are dates that where we'll be adopting and various resolutions to pass or to adopt the budget and the levy. The first step would be to set up a preliminary tax levy, which has to happen no later than September 30th. So for us, it's gonna be on September 28th. But prior to that, you can see there's a process that begins today. We had a discussion on preliminary cash reserve levels. I already had that in green, so check that off the books. And we're gonna be bringing back again a request for kind of moving those funds around. But then we're gonna be conducting department and budget levy drivers and with council priorities in April. We can see some important usually in August, we have the city manager recommended budget. So all those meetings are happening with the council participation. So it's a tool that we have in place to help us drive the budget process. And again, the dates in red are dates where we're gonna be kind of approving the preliminary levy, and then the budget hearing must be after November 24th per Minnesota statute. So we set it up for November 30th. And typically the budget hearing and the adoption of the final levy are two different dates here. Some cities do have those on the same date. I think it's great to have this separate because here's the residents' input. It will give us a chance to maybe make some changes if we want to. And again, the adoption of the final budget is set up for December 7th, which that also has to happen no later than December 30th. Again, that's the first part where the city council is heavily involved in this budget process. So it's important that you kind of put those on your calendar and try your best to be part of that process. We really are looking for a lot of input from you guys.
If I could just jump in, Mr. Mayor. What you see there is pretty reflective of what we've done in the past as far as the process. The dates changed a little bit. But the new thing is the April 20th meeting where we're going to come together as staff to talk about some general budget drivers that we're seeing based on decisions made in the 26 budget and what that means for the 27 budget, and some projections on what we would think some other cost drivers might be kind of in the budget process. We also do want to talk a little bit about strategic plan priorities. I know it's going to be a challenge given the pressure we are facing on increasing levies to do something new, but this is an opportunity for us to talk through some of those strategic plan priorities. If there's something that we think we can do, should be doing, whether that's got a cost or not, and we want to kind of try to identify those because this is how we would build it into the budget process, and we want to do it earlier on in the process. Right now, we have it scheduled for April 20th, which is a regularly scheduled meeting. We can always do that as a special meeting. We would like to have all department heads participate in the council in a work session, maybe in a much more informal way. So whether it's in this room or offsite is for you all to discuss here. But we do want to kind of just have the conversation. There's really no hard and fast decisions can be made at that point. It's just more of a conversation and get some priorities from you and give you some understanding of kind of what we're looking at, kind of a sneak peek of some of the things that might be popping up as the budget process. As you know, I don't formally present it back to you until August, so there's some time in between there, but it's really good to try to do that early on. So I just wanted to call that out, and you may want to come back and chat about that a little bit more.
Okay, and I think to that point, it may make sense to do a sort of a two-phase approach there, especially if we want to do more informal offsite, is maybe still reserve the 20th for some kind of report out of that process, if that makes sense, so that we're both, have it. Because I could see where we might benefit from some of the types of meetings that we had in our strategic planning process, where we had department heads, we had, Pat's leadership team as well as the council, having much more informal conversations. Obviously, it's still a public meeting, open to the public, it's posted and notified, just might not necessarily be on camera, might not necessarily be here. But then, still have some kind of, and maybe the 20th isn't the exact right date for it, depending on the timing of the other discussion, but to have that sort of more formalized report out at a council meeting so that it's in the regular format. That's my thought about looking at informal versus formal. I would actually think that it might make sense if we do the informal offsite sort of, more casual thing, that we allow a fair amount of time for it too. I mean, I might suggest, it could be like some of our strategic planning sessions were maybe 3 or 4 hours long. So just throwing it out there, and certainly that's something the council can feedback on. And then I would also say that would probably be something we'd want to, I don't know what the participation might be from the Finance Commission members, but maybe the Finance Commission members may want to be invited to be there for sure to at least witness the process on that informal discussion, and the council could have conversations if we really want them part of the conversation as well. So just throwing out some thoughts there. I hope, I don't know if we interrupted the flow of the
I did want to have a
presentation
conversation about this.
or not, but this is starting to get into some of the feedback part of it as well, so I'll try to throttle back a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Urgent, for bringing that up. Definitely that's a new item that hasn't been done. I think it's great to have dedicated time to really come together and discuss about some of the priorities and strategic initiatives that we want to implement with the budget process. So I think that meeting is going to be very beneficial for us.
I would just say, if we're gonna do that though, that's like a month away. So we need to get it on the calendar ASAP so that people can make arrangements with day jobs and other things like that, so we can accommodate that.
My suggestion, and certainly you could have a special meeting, but I think we should dedicate that meeting on April 20th. To the mayor's point, then we can look to report back at a future council meeting, whether that's the 27th or the first meeting in May, kind of what was discussed. And obviously, we'll have minutes of that particular meeting, but at the same time, we want a more consolidated report on that. Since it's already on your calendar, and assuming that you all were able to make it, I think to keep it simple, maybe just keep it on the 20th.
I would be okay with keeping it on the 20th. I mean, I would be also okay, since this is gonna be a long meeting, and I do think it should be a longer meeting, moving the time up as well, we strategic ones, I think, earlier as well.
Get like a 5 o'clock start time or something like
5 or
that.
even earlier. I mean, just thinking like the quality of discussion kind of will be going downhill at like 8, 9 o'clock. And so doing it earlier, I think, when we're fresh, staff is fresh, may make sense.
We
So
can look at that.
yeah, I'm not proposing.
Right, and we certainly have some time between now and then to finalize a start time. Other thoughts from council members just on that notion and the sort of the pseudo plan we've started to come up with?
Oh, we're gonna discuss it now?
We are diving right in.
All right, well, I like the idea of the meeting on the 20th, since it's on our calendar, with getting, cause I felt that when we did the strategic plan, having that format was very productive, and it gave the department heads opportunity to speak and for us to hear directly from them, so I think it's a great idea to do it, and then report back after that. I think it's a good idea.
Thoughts, Councilmember Straw?
That's fine, and just again, I know on the future meeting, the ethics meeting on April 8th is not listed, so just keeping all of the things we have in April on the agenda and in our mind's eye.
Maybe all the more reason not to add another meeting.
Correct.
Other thoughts from council members, staff?
Okay, so we'll plan on the 20th. We'll get back to you on the start time.
Anything else on the schedule that you have questions about or suggestions related to?
I was gonna add a couple more things if
Okay.
I may. The schedule is not only focusing on the levy in the budget, but also on the utility rates, the CAP. So there's different dates here that we're gonna have discussion about other items that kind of part of the budget process, but not, typically related to a levy necessarily. So the water utility rates will be also reviewed in November. And then we're gonna be getting the Finance Commission involved as well. Prior to September 21st will probably be our August 26th meeting where we're gonna do the CIP review. August 26th meeting, we're gonna be doing the city manager budget and levy review with the Finance Commission. And then also September 15th, we're gonna have the recommendation of the budget and levy with the Finance Commission prior to bringing it for adoption on September 21st with the City Council. And then September 21st, that's the CIP and budget levy final recommendation prior to about the same time. So that's kind of
So I note on
Sure, yeah.
in the packet information, the second Finance Commission meeting in September that you've got listed as the 21st is actually the 15th on that list. So did staff look at making an adjustment there or having 2 meetings in September for the Finance Commission?
No, I think it was just one. So they get it in end of August, I present to them, and then they come back, and I think we had to
So
switch that.
whichever date is the one date for,
I believe it's the 15th, right? It has to be the 15th.
I think it's the 15th.
Okay.
And then they'll come on the 21st to the council meeting to talk
okay,
about.
got it, that's a 20,
to
that's a
come to
sort of
you with a
both
recommendation.
entities at the same
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah, and
Now
then-
I understand.
Then the 28th is when you make the final decision.
Attention was on this spreadsheet to update this. I think I put it on the packet, but not here. So I apologize for
Nope,
that.
that's all right, that clarification helps me understand it, yeah.
From a flow perspective, we wanna present to the commission first and then, something like that. Okay.
So the commission's gonna be busy on the 26th of August.
Yeah, although we'll have looked at the CIP once already in July, so. So I think we're just asking for you to adopt this budget calendar as presented.
I move to adopt as presented.
Second.
Maybe before we get to a motion, I just wanna do a quick double check since I missed it on one of the previous items. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on the proposed budget schedule for 2026? Yeah, I promise at the beginning of every meeting
I know.
that I speak on every item, so I need to make sure I don't renege on my promise. All right. With that, I think we had a motion from Councilmember
And a
Groff
second.
and a second from Councilmember Strawn to adopt the budget calendar as presented here. I don't think we made any changes to it other than the report out on the 27th,
Yeah.
which, I think that's
Still on the
it's
calendar.
okay. All right. With that, we've got that motion. Councilmember Groff is the maker of the motion.
No.
All right, Councilmember Strawn, seconder. Other discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of adopting that schedule signify by saying aye. Aye opposed? That passes unanimously. That schedule is approved. That brings us then, thank you to staff and everyone on our business items this evening. We do have a couple of, or 3 sets of meeting minutes to consider this evening, and council has had a chance to receive those and provide feedback to staff. And this would be the opportunity, if there are any further changes or corrections that need to be made, we can bring those forward. Otherwise, a motion to approve one or multiple ones of those would be appropriate, depending on council's desire to. Do we need some abstain
Yes,
action?
we have
Okay.
that, because that wasn't, the
March 2nd
23rd.
or the 23rd? Got it, okay. So you want to take the 23rd minutes as a motion?
I can move the approval of those.
Second.
Councilmember Graff, second by Councilmember Bauer, to approve the minutes of the 23rd, both the City Council and EDA. I'm assuming there were no other changes or corrections than were brought forward. All right, hearing none, then all discussion on the motion. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
All right, that's 4-0 with Councilmember Schroeder abstaining. Those minutes pass. All right, then we have the minutes of our March 2nd council meeting.
I'd move to approve.
Second.
That's second by Councilmember Bauer. Discussion on that motion or additional changes or corrections? All right, hearing none, the only thing I will just note is that it did seem like this last few sets of minutes were a little more detailed than we have been getting from our service.
kinda
And I
nice.
think that was appreciated, although it
was.
took longer to
Yes.
pages on the one of them, but
they were
struggled through
fewer corrections to
fewer
it.
corrections. We won't say if there was any correlation as to the timing of the review, the length of the minutes, and the number. Moving on, we have a motion before us to approve the minutes of our March 3rd council meeting as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Those minutes are approved. That then brings us to our consent agenda. We still have the 5 items on that, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Trudgeon to give us a description of those items.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 10A approves payments in the amount of $614,465.84. Item 10B approves a temporary gambling permit for Friends of Roseville Parks for bingo at the Cedar Home Community Building on April 18th and November 7th, and a temporary gambling permit to Camp Odeyan for a raffle at Midland Hills Country Club on June 1st, 2026. Agenda item 10C approves the purchase of 9 encrypted radios for the police department and a replacement brush chipper for Public Works. Item 10D approves applying for a Pathways to Policing grant with the Minnesota Department of Public Safety. The application is requesting for 3 cost reimbursement grants to support schooling costs for 3 police officer candidates for a total of $60,000 or $20,000 each. The city has received this grant in the past and has been very successful in filling our vacancies. And then finally, item 10E approves an amended contract with the Roseville area schools regarding school resource officers. This amendment is being made to comply with the recently adopted police officer standard training or post-board model regarding data practices. And that is the consent agenda.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Strawn, second from Councilmember Schroeder, quicker than I could write them down. Discussion on the motion. I did want to just note on the school liaison officer contract, that is something that had a lot of intense discussion during the 2020-2021 timeframe after the George Floyd shooting. And I think the conclusion at that time, well, it certainly school resources officers can be controversial, especially, and I think are in other parts of the country. Mm-hmm. I think the relationship we've had with the Roseville schools and the approach that our officers take is different than, our officers are not involved in school disciplinary matters. Our officers are oftentimes not even in uniform necessarily, but in a polo shirt and things like that. And so I think it's a much more proactive and interactive relationship with the students. So I just wanted to note that for folks who may not be familiar with that program and how it has worked at Roseville. So thanks for the indulgence to make that point. Councilmember
Just to add to that, I happened to talk with our SRO who's at Rams, the middle school, whose wife is a special ed teacher during the day. Quite a different perspective on doing the work, and they can only be in that school for a year or two, and he just really told me about how much he's appreciated the experience. So I think yes, they can be a rough situation, and going in I think I was much more skeptical, but it was really nice to have that perspective.
Once again, we're doing things differently in Roseville. And the only other thing I would note just in that regard is it's a great path to leadership in the police department in Roseville, because if I'm not mistaken, I think our chief was a former school resource officer, and I think many of our commanders and lieutenants have also had that role. So that if it means anything, I think that tells how it rounds out the individuals. With that, we have a motion before us to approve the consent items. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. And then finally, future agenda review, Mr. Treasurer.
Yes, our next meeting is next Monday. We have a couple items regarding the State Patrol Headquarters project, a comprehensive plan amendment and rezoning and an encroachment agreement, and also a public improvement contract with them as well. And we have a bunch of hotel license renewals. We're just wrapping up the final conversations about a couple, but for the most part, everything is going well. A lot of them will be on the consent agenda, if not all of them, for that meeting. On April 6th, we'll have a little bit more of a workshop like tonight, the Climate Equity Action Plan update. There is a land use request to cancel the PUD at Centerpoint to allow for a different use. But I off the top of my head, I'm not recalling the history, but we had modified that and now there's some uses that would be different from what the PUD would be. I think it would be like a restaurant and a daycare, is my understanding. So anyway, we'll bring that forward for discussion. There's a minor plat on 2816 Oxford Street, and then we have a short-term rental renewal for 419 Judith. On April 13th, we'll have a special EDA meeting. We do have development agreement with High Development and Ramsey County for that project for the Environmental Response Fund. We originally maybe targeted that here in earlier March. We had to push that off a little bit, so want to do that. Don't have anything necessarily scheduled for the 13th. Then April 20th, as you can see, is what we just talked about, so we'll plan that meeting exclusively for that item. And that's what I have for our future agenda.
And as was noted by Councilmember Strawn, the commission member training and ethics training and chair and vice chair training all happen on April 8th. So the evening begins, I believe it begins at 5:30 with the meal and then.
Yeah, 6 o'clock, yeah.
So anyway, more to
We'll get the
come.
details out on that.
And I did just want to note, so on the PUD cancellation, is that an action item for the 6th?
I believe so.
Okay, and so that's a workshop session, and I wonder if we're sort of disobeying the spirit of the workshop. But I also know that sometimes those land use things have time constraints. And so I'm wondering, since we don't seem to have anything on the 13th for the council meeting, if there's some thought to swapping either.
Yeah, I think we can certainly look at that. I'll check with
Stick
staff.
to workshop on the 6th and move business to the 13th, or if there's time-sensitive business on the 6th, move the workshop to the 13th
No,
or
that's fair,
something like that.
yeah, we'll take a look at that.
All right, anything from council members as far as council member initiated items, reports, announcements, or anything like that, communications? Councilmember Schroeder.
Yes, Councilmember Bauer and I were down at the Capitol and down with the League of Minnesota Cities organization last week, and we met with our representative and senator, and good conversations. We presented our legislative priorities, went over it line by line to continually push to support the ideas that we want here in Roseville. And then I also have the, last year there was the missing middle bill that, for housing, that we had written a letter that we were against. And now it's coming back, but now they're calling it Starter Home Act. And they have actually worked more with the league to make it more palatable to cities. There's still work to be done, but there looks like they're making some movement. And one of the things I wanted to, there's many things, but the one thing I did want to point out was part of this is they said they would, cities would receive credit for housing policies and zoning changes already adopted. And I think that was one of the things we kept saying here at Roseville, that we have done so much in this area that we didn't want to have more put upon us. And so to be able to have them recognize we've already done a lot of the work, so therefore that way it wouldn't be what we did and more, what we would do is we'd get credit for what we have already done. So that's something that was important. And there's a number of areas, there's still, it's a work in process, but the one thing was good, at least it's starting to move towards making it more palatable for cities. The league said they're still not happy with it, but they're still having conversations. So at least there seems to be some movement. And the rest of the stuff went very well.
Just confirming, you said representative and senator, was that Gottfried and Marty then?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Not
So we have-
representing all
We
of
have
them.
another
No,
representative and
our
another senator.
representatives.
Your
yeah.
representative.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, we have,
Yeah.
because we
We
have
do have
two in
two.
Roseville,
Yeah,
two
but the one was
senators and
sick.
terms. Got it.
Yeah. So, yep. One was sick or her child was sick, so she couldn't make it, but yeah, so.
Yeah, so maybe to reach out to
Sick 1-year-old.
Verbatim
Yeah,
and
that's exactly it.
and to
We'll note that we also had conversations at the Ramsey County League of Local Governments that
Yeah,
took
we
place
talked
too,
about that.
so
Oh, good.
this was a second, if you will. at the-
This is really the
Perfect.
second go around.
Okay.
We continued to remind them of what we've already told them.
There we go, yes, that's a good way of putting it.
Say something 3 times.
We're working on that, definitely.
All right. Other reports or announcements from council members? I did want to note that, just in specific to that, we had our last mayor and city administrator meeting earlier in the month. And this topic did come up, that Starter Home Act. And there was some concern and angst on the part of other cities who maybe haven't done as much as Roseville. And, you know, one of the things I've noted in sort of their summary of the act and the information that's been provided here, it still talks about cities dedicating a certain percentage of their single family to higher density types. And I'm just wondering, you know, to the point of us getting credit, a lot of the things that we've done are by having a certain percentage of our housing zoning as higher density types and not single family.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something that needs to be worked out in the legislation, so I wanted to make that point. And then the other thing is that I don't think we should fool ourselves that we're done or have done everything we need to do in terms of affordability of housing in Roseville, and I think we all know that we need to continue those efforts. And so despite having done a lot of things that would get credit in this legislation, that doesn't mean that we're not talking about affordability and how we can impact that as we go forward. So I just wanted to make those couple of points in that regard. Other communications, reports, announcements,
I just
Councilmember-
follow up on that, because my concern with that they have into that or some way or other is that other metro cities need to bear part of this too. Roseville's been, in my opinion, pretty proactive. Not that we're done, Mayor, I agree with you on that. But some cities have been very hesitant to have any affordable housing, and I think they need to pull their own weight. So that's my
And I think that's why they wanna give, that's, I think, those of us who have, they wanna
Yeah.
make sure we get credit. And I think that's exactly it, cause what they were doing is, you know, those that weren't doing much, they wanted to penalize all cities.
Yes,
And so that didn't seem fair.
needs to be balanced out.
Right. Probably ventured too far away from updates and announcements and
Yes,
communications,
yes,
but
you're right.
anyway, more to come on that later as we follow and track, but I did want to provide some of that feedback as Councilmember Croft did. With that, then, the only other thing I see on our agenda this evening is a
So
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Strawn, seconded by Councilmember Groff. No discussion on the motion to adjourn, I was almost gonna ask for it. With that, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously at 8:07 PM, we are adjourned.